Chapter 3 of Mice and Men. Although there was an evening brightness showing through the window of the bunkhouse, inside it was dusk. Through the open door came the thuds and the occasional clang of the horseshoe game, and now and then the sound of voices raised in approval or derision. Slim and George came into the darkening bunkhouse together. Slim reached up over the card table and turned on the tin-shaded electric light. Instantly, the table was brilliant with light, and the cone of shade threw its brightness straight downwards, leaving the corners of the bunkhouse still in dusk. Slim sat down on a box, and George took his place opposite. "It wasn't nothin'," said Slim. "I would have had to drown most of 'em anyways. No need to thank me about that." George said, "It wasn't much to you, maybe, but it was a hell of a lot to him. Jesus Christ, I don't know how we're going to get him to sleep in here. He'll want to sleep out there in the barn with them. We'll have trouble keeping him from getting right in the box with them pups." "It was nothing," Slim repeated. "Say, you sure was right about him. Maybe he ain't bright, but I never seen such a worker. He damn near killed his partner, Buckin' Burley. There ain't nobody that can keep up with him. God almighty, I never seen such a strong guy." George spoke proudly. "Just tell Lenny what to do, and he'll do it if it don't take no figuring. He can't think of nothing to do himself, but he sure can take orders." There was a clang of horseshoes on an iron stake outside, and little cheers of voices. Slim moved back slightly so the light was not on his face. "Funny how you and him string along together." It was Slim's calm invitation to confidence. "What's funny about it?" George demanded defensively. "Oh, I don't know. Hardly none of them guys ever travel together. I hardly never seen two guys travel together. You know how the hands are. They just come in and get their bunks and their work a month, and then they quit and go out alone. Never seem to give a damn about nobody. It just seems kind of funny, a little cuckoo like him and a smart little guy like you traveling together." "He ain't no cuckoo," said George. "He's dumb as hell, but he ain't crazy. And I ain't so bright neither, or I wouldn't be bucking barley for my 50 and found. If I was bright, even if I could think a little bit smart, I'd have my own little place, and I'd be bringing in my own crops instead of doing all the work and not getting what comes up out of the ground." George fell silent. He wanted to talk. Slim neither encouraged nor discouraged him. He just sat back, quiet and receptive. "It ain't so funny, him and me going around together," George said at last. "Him and me was both born in Auburn. I known his Aunt Clara. She took him in when he was a baby and raised him up. When his Aunt Clara died, Lenny just came along with me out working. Got kind of used to each other after a little while." Said Slim. George looked over at Slim and saw the calm, godlike eyes fastened on him. "Funny," said George. "I used to have a hell of a lot of fun with him. Used to play jokes on him because he was too dumb to take care of himself. But he was too dumb to even know I'd played a joke on him. I had fun. Made me seem goddamn smart alongside of him. Why, he'd do any damn thing I told him. If I told him to walk over a cliff, over he'd go. That wasn't so damn much fun after a while. He never got mad about it neither. I've beat the hell out of him, and he could bust every bone in my body just with his hand, but he never lifted a finger against me." George's voice was taking on the tone of confession. "Tell you what made me stop that. One day a bunch of guys was standing around up on Sacramento River. I was feeling pretty smart. I turns to Lenny and says, 'Jump in,' and he jumps. Couldn't swim a stroke. Damn near drowned before we could get him. And he was so damn nice to me for pulling him out. Clean forgot I told him to jump in. Well, I ain't done nothing like that no more." "He's a nice fellow," said Slim. "Guys don't need to have no sense to be a nice fellow. Seems to me sometimes it just works the other way around. Take a real smart guy, and he ain't hardly ever a nice fella." George stacked and scattered the cards and began to lay out a solitaire hand. Shoes thudded on the ground outside. At the window, the light of the evening still made the window squares bright. "I ain't got no people," George said. "I seen guys that go around on the ranches alone. That ain't no good. They don't have no fun. After a long time, they get mean. They get wanting to fight all the time." "Yeah, they get mean," Slim agreed. "They get so they don't want to talk to nobody." "Course, Lenny's a goddamn nuisance most of the time," said George. "But you get used to going around with a guy and you can't get rid of him." "He ain't mean," said Slim. "I can see Lenny ain't a bit mean." "Course he ain't mean, but he gets into trouble all the time 'cause he's so goddamn dumb, like what happened in Weed." He stopped in the middle and turned over a card. He looked alarmed and peered over at Slim. "You wouldn't tell nobody." "What do you do in Weed?" Slim asked calmly. "You won't tell?" "No, of course you wouldn't." "What do you do in Weed?" Slim asked again. "Well, He seen this girl in a red dress. Dumb bastard like he is, he wants to touch everything he likes, just wants to feel it. So he reaches out to feel this red dress, and the girl lets out a squawk, and that gets Lenny all mixed up. And he holds on because that's the only thing he can think to do. Well, this girl squawks and squawks. I was just a little bit off, and I heard the yelling, so I come a-running. And by that time, Lenny's so scared, all he can think to do is just hold on. I socked him over the head with a fence picket to make him let go. He was so scared he wouldn't let go of that dress. He's so goddamn strong, you know. Slim's eyes were level and unwinking. He nodded very slowly. So what happens? George carefully built his line of solitaire cards. Well, that girl rabbits and tells the law she's been raped, and this guy in weeds starts a party out to lynch Lenny, so we sit in an irrigation ditch underwater all the rest of that day, only got our heads sticking out from the side of the ditch, and that night we scrammed out of there. Slim sat in silence for a moment. Didn't hurt the girl none, huh? He asked finally. Hell no, he just scared her. I'd be scared too if he grabbed me, but he never hurt her. He just wanted to touch that red dress, like he wants to pet them pups all the time. He ain't mean, said Slim. I can tell a mean guy a mile off. Course he ain't. He'll do any damn thing Lenny came in through the door. He wore his blue denim coat over his shoulders like a cape, and he walked hunched way over. Hi, Lenny, said George. How you like the pup now? Lenny said breathlessly, He brown and white, just like I wanted. He went directly to his bunk and lay down and turned his face to the wall and drew up his knees. George put down his cards very deliberately. Lenny, he said sharply. Lenny twisted his neck and looked back over his shoulder. Huh? What you want, George? I told you you couldn't bring that pup in here. What pup, George? I ain't got no pup. George went quickly to him, grabbed him by the shoulder, and rolled him over. He reached down and picked the tiny puppy up from where Lenny had been concealing him against his stomach. Lenny sat up quickly. Give him to me, George. George said, You get right back up and take this pup back to its nest. He's got to sleep with his mother. You want to kill him? Just born last night, and you take him out of the nest. You take him back, or I'll tell Slim not to let you have him. Lenny held out his hands pleadingly. Give him to me, George. I'll take him back. I didn't mean no harm, George. Honest, I didn't. I just wanted to pet him a little. George handed the pup back. All right, you get him back there real quick, and don't you take him out no more. You'll kill him first thing you know. Lenny fairly scuttled out of the room. Slim had not moved. His calm eyes followed Lenny out the door. Jesus, he said. He's just like a kid, ain't he? Sure, he's just like a kid. There ain't no more harm in him than a kid neither, except he's so strong. I bet he won't come in here to sleep tonight. He'll sleep right alongside that box in the barn. Well, let him. He ain't doing no harm out there. It was almost dark outside now. Old Candy, the swamper, came in and went to his bunk, and behind him struggled his old dog. Hello, Slim. Hello, George. Didn't neither of you play horseshoes? I didn't feel like playing tonight, said Slim. Candy went on. Either of you guys got a slug of whiskey? I got a gut ache. I ain't, said Slim. I'd drink it myself if I had, and I ain't got a gut ache neither. Got a gut ache, Candy said. Them goddamn turnips gave it to me. I know they was going to before I even ate 'em. The thick-bodied Carlson came in out of the darkening yard. He walked to the other end of the bunkhouse and turned on the second shaded light. Darker than hell in here, he said. Jesus, how that Negro can pitch shoes. He's plenty good, said Slim. Damn right he is, said Carlson. He don't give nobody else a chance to win. He stopped and sniffed the air. Still sniffing, looked down at the old dog. God almighty, that dog stinks. Get him out of here, Candy. I don't know nothing that stinks as bad as an old dog. You've got to get him out. Candy rolled to the edge of his bunk. He reached over and patted the ancient dog, and he apologized. I've been around him so much, I never noticed how he stinks. I can't stand him in here, said Carlson. That stink hangs around even after he's gone. He walked over with his heavy-legged stride and looked down at the dog. Got no teeth, he said. He's all stiff with rheumatism. He ain't no good to you, Candy, and he ain't no good to himself. Why don't you shoot him, Candy? The old man squirmed uncomfortably. Well, hell, I had him so long. Had him since he was a pup. I herded sheep with them, he said proudly. You wouldn't think it to look at him now, but he was the best damn sheep dog ever. George said, I seen a guy in Weed that had an Airedale that could herd sheep. Learned it from the other. Carlson was not to be put off. Look, Candy, this dog just suffers himself all the time. If you was to take him out and shoot him right in the back of the head, he leaned over and pointed right there, he'd never know what hit him. Candy looked about unhappily. No, he said softly. I couldn't do that. I've had him too long. He don't have no fun, Carlson insisted, and he stinks to beat hell. Tell you what, I'll shoot him for you. Then it won't be you that does it. Candy threw his legs off his bunk. He scratched the white stubble whiskers on his cheek nervously. I'm so used to him, he said softly. I had him from a pup. Well, you ain't being kind to keeping him alive, said Carlson. Look, Slim's bitch got a litter now. I bet Slim'd give you one of those pups to raise up, wouldn't you, Slim? The Skinner had been studying the old dog with his calm eyes. Yeah, he said, you can have a pup if you want to. He seemed to shake himself free for speech. Carl's right, Candy. That dog ain't no good to himself. I wish somebody'd shoot me if I got that old and crippled. Candy looked helplessly at him, for Slim's opinions were law. Maybe it'd hurt him, he suggested. I don't mind taking care of him. Carlson said, the way I'd shoot him, it wouldn't feel nothing. I'd put the gun right here, he pointed with his toe, right in the back of the head. He wouldn't even quiver. Candy looked for help from face to face. It was quite dark outside by now. A young laboring man came in. His sloping shoulders were bent forward, and he walked heavily on his heels as though he carried an invisible grain bag. He went to his bunk and put his hat on the shelf. Then he picked up a pulp magazine from his shelf and brought it to the light over at the table. Did I show you this, Slim? He asked. Show me what? The young man turned to the back of the magazine and put it down on the table and pointed with his finger. Right there, read that. Slim bent over. Go on, said the young man. Read it out loud. Dear Editor, Slim read slowly, I read your mag for 6 years, and I think it's the best one on the market. I like stories by Peter Rand. I think he's a Windig. Give us more of the Dark Rider. I don't write in any letters. Just thought I'd tell you I think your mag's the best dime worth I'd ever spent. Slim looked up questioningly. What'd you want me to read that for? Whit said, Go on, read the name at the bottom. Slim read it. Yours for Success, William Tenner. He glanced up at Whit again. What'd you want me to read that for? Whit closed the magazine impressively. Don't you remember Bill Tenner? Worked here about 3 months ago. Slim thought. Little guy? He said. Drove a cultivator? That's him, Whit cried. That's the guy. You think he's the guy that wrote this letter? I know it. Bill and me was in here one day. Bill had one of them books that had just come. He was looking for it, and he said, I wrote a letter. I wonder if they put it in a book. But it wasn't there. Bill says, maybe they're saving it for later. And that's what they done. It's there. I guess you're right, said Slim. Got it right in the book. George held out his hand for the magazine. Let's look at it. Whit found the place again, and he didn't surrender his hold on it. He pointed to the letter with his forefinger, and then he went to his box shelf and laid the magazine carefully in. I wonder if Bill's seen it, he said. Bill and me worked in that patch of field peas. Ran cultivators, both of us. Bill was a hell of a nice fella. During the conversation, Carlson had refused to be drawn in. He continued to look at the old dog. Candy watched him uneasily. At last, Carlson said, If you want me to, I'll put that old devil out of his misery right now and get it over with. Ain't nothing left for him. Can't eat, can't see, can't even walk without hurtin'. Candy said hopefully, You ain't got no gun. The hell I ain't. Got a Luger. Won't hurt him none. Candy said, Maybe tomorrow. Let's wait till tomorrow. I don't see any reason for it, said Carlson. He went to his bunk, pulled his bag from underneath it, and took out a Luger pistol. Let's get it over with, he said. We can't sleep with them stinking around here. He put the pistol in his hip pocket. Candy looked a long time at Slim, trying to find some reversal, and Slim gave him none. At last, Candy said softly and hopelessly, All right, take him. He did not look down at the dog at all. He lay back on his bunk and crossed his arms behind his head and stared at the ceiling. From his pocket, Carlson took a little leather thong. He stooped over and tied it around the old dog's neck. All the men except Candy watched him. Come on, boy, he said gently. And then he said apologetically to Candy, He won't even feel it. Candy did not move or answer him. He twitched the thong. Come on, boy. The old dog got slowly and stiffly to his feet and followed, the gently pulling leash. Slim said, Carlson? Yeah, you know what to do. What do you mean, Slim? Take a shovel, said Slim shortly. Oh, sure, I getcha. He led the dog out into the darkness. George followed the door and shut the door and set the latch gently in its place. Candy lay rigidly on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Slim said loudly, One of my lead mules got a bad hoof. Got to get some tar on it. His voice trailed off. It was silent outside. Carlson's footsteps died away. The silence came into the room, and the silence lasted. George chuckled. I bet Lenny's right out there in the barn with his pups. He won't want to come in here no more now that he's got a pup. Slim said, Candy, you can have one of those pups if you want. Candy did not answer. The silence fell in the room again. It came out of the night and invaded the room. George said, Anyone like to play a little urge? I'll play a few with you, said Whit. They took places opposite on each other at the table under the light, but George did not shuffle the cards. He rippled the edges of the deck nervously, and the little snapping noises drew the eyes of all the men in the room, so he stopped doing it. The silence fell in the room again. A minute passed, and another minute. Candy lay still, staring at the ceiling. Slim gazed at him for a moment and looked down at his hands. He subdued one hand with the other and held it down. There came a little gnawing sound from under the floor, and all the men looked down towards it gratefully. Only Candy continued to stare at the ceiling. Sounds like there's a rat under there, said George. We ought to get a trap down there. Whit broke out. What the hell's taking him so long? Lay out some cards, why don't you? We ain't gonna get no you're just played this way. George brought the cards together tightly and studied the backs of them. There was silence in the room again. A shot sounded in the distance. The men looked quickly at the old man. Every head turned toward him. For a moment he continued to stare at the ceiling. Then he rolled slowly over and faced the wall and lay silent. George shuffled the cards noisily and dealt them. Whit drew a scoring board behind him and set the pegs to start. Whit said, I guess you guys really come here to work. How do you mean? George asked. Whit laughed. Well, you come on Friday. You got 2 days to work till Sunday. I don't see how you figure, said George. Whit laughed again. You do if you've been around these big ranches much. Guy that want to look over a ranch comes on Saturday afternoon. He gets Saturday night supper and 3 meals on Sunday, and then he can quit Monday morning after breakfast without turning his hand. But you come to work Friday at noon. You put in a day and a half no matter how you figure. George looked at him levelly. We're going to stick around a while, he said. Me and Lenny going to roll up a steak. The door opened quietly, and the stable buck put in his head, a lean Negro head lined with pain and eyes patient. Mr. Slim? Slim took his eyes from old Candy. Huh? Oh, hello, Crooks. What's the matter? You told me to warm up tar for that mule's foot. I got it warm. Oh, sure, Crooks. I'll come right out and put it on. I can do it if you want, Mr. Slim. No, I'll come do it myself. He stood up. Crooks said, Mr. Slim? Yeah. That big guy's messing with your pups out in the barn. Well, he ain't doing no harm. I gave him one of them pups. I just thought I'd tell you, said Crooks. He's taking him out of the nest and handling him. That won't do them no good. He won't hurt him, said Slim. I'll come along with you now. George looked up. If that crazy bastard's fooling around too much, just kick him out, Slim. Slim followed the stable buck out of the room. George dealt, and Whit picked up his cards and examined them. See the new kid yet? He asked. What kid? George asked. Why, Curly's new wife. Yeah, I seen her. Ain't she a looky-loo? I ain't seen that much of her, said George. Whit laid down his cards impressively. Well, stick around and keep your eyes open. You'll see plenty. She ain't concealing nothing. I never seen nobody like her. She got the eye going all the time on everybody. I bet she even gives a stable buck the eye. I don't know what the hell she wants. George asked casually, Been any trouble since she got here? It was obvious that Whit was not interested in his cards. He laid his hand down and George scooped it in. George laid out his deliberate solitaire hand, 7 cards and 6 on top, and 5 on top of those. Whit said, I see what you mean. No, there ain't been nothing yet. Curly's got yellow jackets in his drawers, but that's all so far. Every time the guys is around, she shows up. She's looking for Curly, or she thought she left something lying around, and she's looking for it. Seems like she can't keep away from the guys. And Curly's pants is just crawling with ants, but they ain't nothing come of it yet. George said, She gonna make a mess. They're gonna be a bad mess about her. She's jailbait all set on the trigger. That's Curly's got his work cut out for him. Ranch with a bunch of guys on it ain't no place for a girl, especially like her. Whit said, If you get any ideas, you ought to come in with town with us guys tomorrow night. Why, what's doing? Just the usual thing. We going to old Susie's place. Hell of a nice place. Old Susie's a laugh, always cracking jokes. Like when she says when we come up to the front porch last Saturday night, Susie opens the door and she yells over her shoulder, Get your coats on, girls. Here comes the sheriff. She never talks dirty, neither. Got 5 girls there. What's it set you back? George asked. 2.5. You can get a shot for 2 bits. Susie's got nice chairs to sit in, too. If a guy don't want to flop, why, he can just sit in the chairs and have a couple or 2, 3 shots and pass the time of day, and Susie don't give a damn. She ain't rushing guys through and kicking them out if they don't want to flop." "I might go in and look the joint over," said George. "Sure, come along. It's a hell of a lot of fun, her cracking jokes all the time. Like she says one time, she says, 'I knew people that if they got a rag rug on the floor and a Cupid doll lamp on the phonograph, they think they're running a parlor house.' That's Clara's house she's talking about. And Susie says, 'I know what you boys want.' She says, 'My girls is clean,' she says, 'and there ain't no water in my whiskey,' she says. 'If any of you guys want to look at a Cupid doll lamp and take your own chance getting burned, why, you know where to go.' And she says, 'There's guys around here walking bow-legged because they like to look at Cupid doll lamp.'" George asked, "Clara runs the other house, huh?" "Yeah," Whit said. "We don't ever go there. Clara gets $3 a crack and 35 cents a shot, and she don't crack no jokes. But Susie's place is clean, and she's got nice chairs. Don't let no goo-goos in, neither." "Me and Lenny's rolling up a steak," said George. "I might go in and set and have a shot, but I ain't putting out no 2.5. "Well, guys gotta have fun sometimes," said Whit. The door opened, and Lenny and Carlson came in together. Lenny crept to his bunk and sat down, trying not to attract attention. Carlson reached under his bunk and brought out his bag. He didn't look at old Candy, who still faced the wall. Carlson found a little cleaning rod in the bag and a can of oil. He laid them out on his bed and brought out his pistol and took out the magazine and snapped the loaded shell from the chamber. Then he fell to cleaning the barrel with the little rod. When the ejector snapped, Candy turned it over and looked for a moment at the gun before he turned back to the wall again. Carlson said casually, "Curly been in yet?" "No," said Whit. "What's eating on Curly?" Carlson squinted down the barrel of his gun. "Looking for his old lady. I seen him going round and round outside." Whit said sarcastically, "He spends half his time looking for her, and the rest of the time she's looking for him." Curly burst into the room excitedly. "Any of you guys seen my wife?" he demanded. "She ain't been here," said Whit. Curly looked threateningly around the room. "Where the hell's Slim?" "Went to the barn," George said. "He's going to put some tar on a split hoof." Curly's shoulders dropped and squared. "How long ago did he go?" 5, 10 minutes. Curly jumped out the door and banged it after him. Whit stood up. "I guess maybe I'd like to see this," he said. "Curly's just spoiling or he wouldn't start for Slim. And Curly's handy, goddamn handy. Got in the finals for the Golden Gloves. He's got newspaper clippings about," he considered. "But just the same, he better leave Slim alone. Nobody don't know what Slim can do." "Thinks Slim's with his wife, don't he?" said George. "Looks like it," said Whit. "Of course Slim ain't. At least I don't think Slim is. But I'd like to see the fuss that comes off it. Come on, let's go." George said, "I'm staying here. I don't want to get mixed up in nothing. Lenny and me got to make a steak." Carlson finished cleaning the gun and put it in the bag and pushed the bag under his bunk. "I guess I'll go look her over," he said. Old Candy laid still, and Lenny, from his bunk, watched George cautiously. When Whit and Carlson were gone and the door closed after him, George turned to Lenny. "What you got on your mind?" "I ain't done nothing, George. Slim says I better not pet them pups so much for a while. Slim says it ain't good for 'em, so I come right in. I've been good, George." "I could have told you that," said George. "Well, I wasn't hurting 'em none. I just had mine on my lap, petting it." George asked, "Did you see Slim out in the barn?" "Sure I did. He told me I better not pet that pup no more." "Did you see the girl?" "You mean Curly's girl?" "Yeah. Did she come in the barn?" "No. Anyways, I never seen her." "You never seen Slim talking to her?" She ain't been in the barn." "Okay," said George. "I guess them guys ain't gonna see no fight. If there's any fighting, Lenny, you keep out of it." "I don't want no fight," said Lenny. He got up from his bunk and sat down at the table across from George. Almost automatically, George shuffled the cards and laid out a solitaire hand. He used deliberate, thoughtful slowness. Lenny reached for a face card and studied it, then turned it upside down and studied it. "Both ends are the same," he said. "George, why is both ends the same?" "I don't know," said George, "just the way they make 'em. What was Slim doing in the barn when you seen him?" "Slim? Sure, you seen him in the barn, and he told you not to pet the pup so much." "Oh, yeah. He had a can of tar and paintbrush. I don't know what for." "You're sure the girl didn't come in like she came in here today?" "No, she never come." George sighed. "You give me a good horror house every time," he said. "A guy can go in and get drunk and get everything out of his system at once and no messes, and he knows how much it's going to set him back. These here jailbaits is just set on trigger of house go." Lenny followed his words admiringly and then moved his lips a little to keep up. George continued, "You remember Andy Cushman, Lenny? Went to grammar school? The one that his old lady used to make hotcakes for the kids? Lenny asked. Yeah, that's the one. You can remember anything if there's anything to eat in it. George looked carefully at the solitaire hand. He put an ace up on his scoring rack and piled a 2, 3, and 4 of diamonds on it. Andy's in San Quentin right now on the count of a tart, said George. Lenny drummed the table with his fingers. George? Huh? George, how long's it going to be till we get a little place and live off the fat of the land and rabbits? I don't know, said George. We got to get a big stake together. I know of a little place we can get cheap, but they ain't giving it away. Old Candy turned slowly over. His eyes were wide open. He watched George carefully. Lenny said, Tell about that place, George. I just told you last night. Go on, tell again, George. Well, it's 10 acres, said George. Got a little windmill, got a little shack on it, and chicken runs. Got a kitchen, orchard, cherries, apples, peaches, cots, nuts, few berries. There's a place for alfalfa and plenty of water to flood it. They's a pig pen. And rabbits, George. No place for rabbits now, but I could easily build a few hutches, and you could feed alfalfa to the rabbits. Damn right I could, said Lenny. You goddamn right I could. George's hands stopped working the cards. His voice was growing warmer. And we could have a few pigs, and I could build a smokehouse like the one Grandpa had. And when we kill a pig, we can smoke the bacon and the hams and make sausage and all like that. And when the salmon run up the river, we could catch 100 of them and salt them down or smoke them. We could have them for breakfast. There ain't nothing so nice as smoked salmon. When the fruit come in, we could have it. And tomatoes, they're easy to can. Every Sunday we'd kill a chicken or a rabbit. Maybe we'd have a cow or a goat, and the cream's so goddamn thick you could cut it with a knife and take it out with a spoon. Lenny watched him with wide eyes, and Old Candy watched him too. Lenny said softly, We could live off the fat of the land. Sure, said George. We can all vegetables in the garden, and if we want a little whiskey, we can sell a few eggs or something, or some milk. We just live there, we belong there. Wouldn't be no more running around the country getting fed by a Jap cook. No, sir, we'd have our own place where we belonged, not sleep in no bunkhouse. Tell about the house, George, Lenny begged.